everyone. Welcome to Ink and Paint tonight. We are so excited to have our little chat. Tonight we are going to be covering something that we kind of hinted at and promised the first couple of weeks and are finally circling back to with some of my lovely panel. We are going to be talking about planning your happily ever after. So, all the weddings, special events, and all of those fun things. Tonight I am joined by Shannon and Stephanie, and it is a pleasure to have you both.
Hi, everybody.
So just real quick, before we get into all the nitty gritty, so I got married at Disneyland circa 2012. What about you ladies? I know we have a slightly different backgrounds when it comes to the events.
Yeah. So for me, I got married in Walt Disney World in November of 2018. So I did want to add that stipulation that everything I'm going to speak about tonight is pre-COVID. I don't know what has changed since then, but it wasn't too far away. So it should still be a little relevant.
And I did not get married at Disney at all, but my husband did propose at the Grand Floridian. Usually you'll see people propose in front of the castle and the crowd claps and cheers, but he had it planned out and had called in advance, and we had a little private moment there at the wedding chapel. So it was really sweet.
That's so sweet.
Nice. Sorry. Unfortunately, Jill couldn't join us again tonight. She's a very busy lady over the summer, and she had more guests coming into town. But so we're having a little bit of tech issues. Hopefully, nothing like we had last show, but everything is going to go fine. So with that being said, let's start off with the first question that I think a lot of times pops into people's head, because I know it comes in to play a lot of times when I say that I got married at Disney. And is it something attainable and realistic? I'll just kick off by saying I got married, and I actually went and found my old planning notebook, which I'm shocked that I still had.
Oh, awesome.
From 10 years ago. But so again, it's a caveat of 10 years ago, but one of the things that actually led me to get married at Disneyland, because I didn't think that it was something that was possible, was just because we knew we were getting married in Southern California, was that it actually was shockingly not as much of an upcharge from other SoCal you venues. Shannon, did you feel the same way about Disney World when you were looking, or did you just you knew that that's where you wanted to get married?
I did know that that's where I wanted to get married. However, I do live in the tri-state area, so New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and the prices were comparable. There were actually some venues near me that had higher per person, like the plate per person price than Disney had. And here's one thing that I loved about having my wedding at Disney. I told them what my budget was that I was comfortable with, and they were very realistic with me. When I started to look at some pictures, there was a picture of a ballroom with beautiful chandeliers, and immediately my planner was like, no, it's not an option. And I said, great. I'd rather someone be straightforward with me than be like, oh, well, we could do that, but then you can't have any flowers. So I think anything is realistic. I think a Disney wedding can really fit any budget. You do have to do a lot of work to make your budget fit, but you can do it.
I would completely agree with that. I mean, obviously, I think in this day and age, getting married is kind of, something it always has been, but especially now post-COVID is something interesting to talk about. But I would definitely say, yeah, it was, again, not to get into I hate talking about money, but obviously in this subject, I feel like we kind of have to be completely transparent and honest. But even though I got married at Disneyland, and granted it was a relatively small wedding, I think we planned for somewhere around 60 guests. Um, we we spent, I think, all told, probably still, I would say, at Disneyland itself, and with everything to the actual wedding, we probably spent about 25K is what I was looking at. Which again, kind of expensive, but I mean, the venue itself was only $2,100. Um, and then obviously, then we had the reception that was separate, and that was obviously more. But um, and Shannon, so yours was a destination wedding.
It was. So, and it was about 100 people. 4 of those people were local to Florida. So everyone was coming in. So that's why we felt that it was important to do more than just the wedding. We actually did add on a welcome event. You can add on whatever you want. You can do brunches, tea parties, all sorts of things. And we felt doing a welcome party was a good way of saying, like, hey, we know you traveled all this way. Like, why not give you a little something extra? And although I should have mentioned that earlier, like, although the wedding itself was comparable to having, if I were to have a wedding at home, of course, there is going to be those added expenses of, your resort stay and your ticket prices and whatever. But for around 100 people, I can say that it was below 6 figures, if that gives you a good idea of how much it was. So,
Yeah. And Steph, what about you in the party that you planned?
So, well, if we want to talk about the engagement, so my husband, a boyfriend at the time, we'd been dating for 6 years leading up to this. So it wasn't even like I had this on my radar because I'm like, it's never going to happen, right? So he was living in Florida at the time. It was like, so he was at the University of Florida at the time. So we just drove down for a Valentine's Day meal, and he told me we were going to Jico, and I thought, okay, we're going to Jico, no big deal. Never been there. It sounds great, got a great wine list and that kind of thing. And he pulls out this like ball gown that I had worn to another event that he had conspired with my mother um, and in December, and had actually brought it down to Florida with him in his suitcase and hid it from me. And then I flew down and he said, no, we need to wear this. I said, I'm not wearing that to Jico. I'm sorry. I don't think you know what Jico is. And he said, well, it's good that we're not going to Jico. We're going to Victoria and Albert's. And I said, oh my gosh, this man is going to ruin this because that is a place where you propose. And he's not going to propose to me. It's, Valentine's. That's cheesy. And so we get in the car, we go. Mind you, the man has the flu. He has straight up the flu. He looks and feels like death. I said, why don't we just watch a movie at home and order pizza or something? He said, no, we're definitely going. So I didn't know what the big deal was. So anyway, we get in the car. We're dressed to the nines there. We're going to Victoria and Albert's, and the whole meal is wonderful. It's very expensive, especially for college age students, for that kind of a meal. And each course comes out and he can't taste it. And I'm like, oh, this is so great. And he's like, I won't, I have no idea. I can't smell or taste anything. And so at the end, they bring out this silver cloche, a silver dome. And for half a second, I thought, could this be a ring? No, it's not good. And guess what? It wasn't a ring. It was a glass slipper that he had engraved, like, happy anniversary, happy Valentine's, everything. And I'm like, oh, that's sweet, but bummer, And so he had apparently called the restaurant, said that he was going to propose. They do a ton of proposals at Victoria and Albert's, as you can imagine. So they had it all prepared. They thought that the ring was going under the cloche, and it wasn't. And so they were a little confused. But he had also called the Grand Floridian groundskeepers, and he said, is the wedding pavilion going to be unlocked? And they said, sure, it's going to be unlocked. So he wanted to walk down there during wishes, during the fireworks, and propose. photos as the fireworks were going off at the castle, but he timed it wrong. And we got
Oh.
down there were no fireworks, but it's fine. There was a custodial staff member that was a cast member that was around, and he took our picture. So
Oh my
we have one
gosh.
picture from the whole thing. But yeah, so I was in disbelief that that he actually would have proposed at Disney, knowing because the Grand Floridian was very close to my heart, as most of you probably know, and I grew up going there with my family, and so it was very touching that he did it at that place. But as far as extra events, I have had a couple of extra events that we have been fortunate enough to do over the years. The first one was in 2013. So again, pre-pandemic. Well, I should say one pre and one post, because the last one we did was just in 2020. And that has changed a lot of things. Pricing especially changed. But we did have to wear masks, go have to social distance while we were inside the building, which was kind of ridiculous because we were there with family and friends that we had been traveling with for a week. So, but whatever. So we did it. And but yeah, it definitely has changed. And I don't know if inflationary cost or just Disney, as we know, increases cost year after year. So the one that I did in 2013, now granted, I did have less people. There were 10 people that attended that one. And then the one that I did in 2020 almost doubled to about 18 people. It doubled in cost as well, almost doubled in cost. So that's obviously extra that you can tack on to your trip. Most people want to get a good week's worth of Disney at the
Mm-hmm.
parks for probably less than $3,000, right?
Mhm.
And hotel, food, everything. And so this in and of itself can just double the cost of your trip right there. And then
Yeah.
depending on what you do, I just feel like both of you guys, I can't wait to you guys to show the pictures because they're gorgeous. But the key with Disney is you can have whatever you want. The thing is, how much do you want to pay for it? So you can
Exactly.
literally do whatever you want to do. You can rent out the entire Magic Kingdom for a night starting at $5 million. So that's fine if that's what you want to do,
Yeah.
but who gets to do that? you know?
Yeah. Well, I hate to say, I do have to apologize for the pictures. So again, those tech difficulties, I didn't get them loaded, and I sincerely apologize. We may have to
Oh,
try
that's
to throw them up
okay.
That's okay.
later. I'm sorry. We were trying to figure it out, and I think there was an issue with my Google Drive, and anyway. So
We
let's
did
talk
get
about
2
really
super
quick.
chats.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
There is Jungle Cruiser. This is to start a fund for the couple who got blocked at Disneyland Paris. Let's support those poor souls.
Yes.
Oh,
For
I didn't even think about that.
$4.99.
We are comedically timing.
Tragic.
Didn't even plan
Yeah.
that. Because I just thought this
There's
morning after we kind of already figured all of this out. But
there's one more.
yes,
Which
we can
Disney
kind of.
had a Sorry, Ashley.
Oh, go
Jungle
ahead.
Cruiser also had a second super chat for $4.99 saying, "Wish Disney had a mobile order wedding package. Just make your selections and wait for the window to open. Sounds romantic as hell." I agree.
I won't be
Wait for that.
surprised if it's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Genuinely
Bob
won't.
Chapek, don't give him ideas.
Well, they do. I mean, on the topic of, I may be a good time to just add this in, but on the topic of cost and for your guests to come down, they do offer discounts in
Mm-hmm.
terms of rooms, so
They
your
do.
room block, and as well as tickets. So I actually chose 3 resorts for my room block: a value, a moderate, and a deluxe. So you're really kind of suiting everyone's needs. Again,
That's
at
good.
discounted rates, and then the discounted park tickets. So there are things to help your guests.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, that was definitely one of the benefits I really loved because it's definitely not even, I think they offered it for a while, correct me if I'm wrong, at Disney World. But I know at Disneyland, unless you were like a pass holder of a certain kind, you couldn't get just evening tickets to Disneyland. And that was something that was really nice that they offered even with ours. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit here in a minute. But we did a morning/early afternoon wedding. And so everybody that came to our wedding, we didn't do it together. It wasn't like, hey, come celebrate with us. But everybody had the option to go to the parks after. But that is a slight segue into planning. So you've decided that you want to get married at Disneyland. The cost hasn't scared you away. What comes next? So, and Shannon, feel free to kind of jump in whenever, but I know, once we did the research, we kind of priced it out and realized that, again, at least in California, not going to be that much more expensive. We weren't going to have to travel, but we did have a lot of family that was going to have to travel in. So we figured, well, if we're doing this thing, why not make it somewhere where people want to go and somewhere that we love, and it's at least been selfishly really special to me. So we reached out to Disney Weddings and Events, and they were really quick. Johnny on the spot booked us a really comprehensive tour. And again, obviously Disneyland slightly smaller. They have the one wedding pavilion. I will say the castle again was a no-go for obvious financial reasons. And also not wake up on the day of my, well, I did anyway, but not having everybody have to wake up at 3:00 in the morning the day of my wedding.
Right.
Straight to the castle, as cool as that would have been. But they had the Rose Garden, and then they had different, I guess you could call them convention, reception rooms at both resorts, the Grand Californian and then the Disneyland Hotel. But they took us all around, they showed us, and then they did something that was really great that kind of surprised me, is that they were honestly more transparent with their pricing than I felt like a lot of the other venues that we went to were. Everything was broken out. They gave us, here is, what all the different, the Rose Garden, or again, if you want to get married at a castle, or if you want to just get married at the Grand Californian Hotel, they have like a little park area or a rooftop. If you want to do, they laid it all out. They said, and here's the breakdown, per person as far as the different reception rooms and the sizes of those rooms and what you can expect to pay per person. Just the range of average of like what the base would be and then per person. And they were so incredibly transparent with their pricing from beginning to end. And that was something that, especially being a bride, that I thought was really amazing, reassuring, and just made it a heck of a lot easier. So that we could actually comparison shop.
Yeah, agreed. They were always straightforward from day one. And when you do start to get the ball rolling, they will give you very detailed timeline of everything, of when you have to make decisions for certain things by, when certain payments are due by, and everything is meticulously thought out, which is really why I also wanted to get married at Disney, because I knew for the money I was going to spend that they weren't going to screw it up, or if they did screw it up, they were going to make it right. So we called down to them. We booked just a short weekend trip in June. I got married in November, so 6 months before. And that's when we toured some venues. I looked at the convention centers at Yacht and Beach Club, Boardwalk, and Grand Floridian. And ultimately, I ended up at the Grand. The ballroom was really underwhelming. The decor is outdated if you've ever been in those ballrooms. It's pretty terrible. But you'd be amazed what they can do with lighting and decor.
Right.
So when we were at that planning session, that's when we also got to do a menu tasting, which was the coolest thing. They actually brought us into the kitchen at the Grand Floridian. We picked things in advance that we wanted to try. So we got to try three or four appetizers, 2 choice of entree. So we got filet and chicken. We also got to do the full cake tasting, which, I mean, there are endless possibilities when it comes to food and any Disney wedding event. Anything you could possibly imagine or ask for. Something that was really cool, really magical for me at the Yachtsman Steakhouse, oddly enough, they have an amazing vegetarian dish. I don't believe they have it on the menu anymore, but it was a sweet potato stuffed pasta with like an umami demi glaze and Parmesan foam. And I asked the chef at the Grand if he could recreate that as my vegetarian option. He was like, "Oh, I'll look into it." And he was like, it turns out I actually am friends with the chef at Yachtsman. I got the recipe and I'll make it for you." And there was nothing additional
Nice.
I had to pay. Yeah, that was magical. And it really was delicious. And guess what? This is kind of like when Magical Express was free. I'd always say Magical Express is free, and then the people would be like, "Oh, you're really paying for it elsewhere." Your Disney wedding
It
wedding
was
planner,
free.
it was free, right? For all intents and purposes, it was free. So your Disney wedding planner is free, and the menu tasting and cake tasting and the whole planning was all free. Whereas some other places around the country, you may have to pay for a planner or coordinator. So that whole process was really
So I have a
awesome.
question for
Yeah.
both of you, if you don't mind. The planning process that you both went through, I have a wedding planner and an event planner friend here locally, and she says the average is a year. You get engaged, you want to put that date down a year in advance. How did it take you guys? Like, what was your time frame?
I believe 16 months is when you can start planning, if I'm not
I was gonna say,
mistaken.
yeah, I think, and ours was under that. I would say we were probably just over a year. Um, we were engaged for longer, but that's another story for a different day. Because it's in no way Disney related. But we were engaged for a long time. But I think we always had like an end. We had the date pretty much already set. There were strings attached with college and things like that. That again, different story for a different day. But yeah, once we got really serious about it, I would say it was about right at a year. Um, and like Shannon was just saying, they walk you through everything. Everything becomes highly detailed. The other thing that I really loved about planning with Disney is that, and again, this is something, different. It's obviously changed with COVID, but with Disney, it was very specific, the things that were, okay, you're going to pay us for this, and you have to choose from like what we have, i.e., the food, obviously the venue, the food, you couldn't bring in outside food or cake. So all of that was done with them. But like Shannon said, you know, they would cater to you as best they could with all of that. And again, it was very even the pre-planned menus that they had though, and the options that they laid out. I mean, we're talking, and I wish I could show it to you, but again, my tech all but died. But I mean, we're talking, I was looking back through my wedding planner, the different increments of like the options you had for appetizers were broken down by like to the 50 cents of a person. You
Yeah,
had
it's true.
different options.
Wow.
Like it was like the level that they took it to was insane. And there was maybe only one or two differences, but it was literally a 50-cent difference. Um,
Well,
so, that was really cool. And I love that they broke that out. But then what they also did that was really, really cool and helpful um, is that they had a list of preferred vendors. Now, they couldn't guarantee special pricing or anything like that, but these were vendors that were kind of vetted and were familiar with working Disney property. They were familiar with Disney protocol. Hindsight being what it was, I wish I would have gone with or been able to go with the Disney preferred photographers, but unfortunately all of them were booked for other events by the time we were able to interview them and start talking about contracts. But that list of preferred vendors was also insanely helpful. I think again, it's one of those things you kind of get what you pay for. And one of the cool things about going with Disney is they really try to make it as simple, stupid as possible. Like once we booked with them and signed the contract, like, yes, hold our date. Here's our deposit. We got like a whole, again, we got the preferred vendors list. We got the breakdown of like timeline of this is how it's going to go. Here are the decisions that you need to make. Like Shannon said, X amount of weeks. Here's when we're going to do your tasting. Um, and everything was just, the things that you didn't even really think of. Um, you know, they had it all completely dialed in, and it made it so
There,
simple to plan.
there was one problem that I had in Florida, and I'm not sure if it's the same out in California, but in terms of getting an actual date, is very difficult because
Mhm.
they do kind of force you into a smaller window. 16 months actually sounds long to me. It may have actually been shorter than that, but you actually have to join some kind of lottery system, and they're very vague about it.
Oh.
Well, we basically had to lay
Oh
out
dear.
days spanning between October and November, Fridays and Saturdays. And there were various times during the day, but I really wanted 5 o'clock. I wanted a Saturday at 5 o'clock. So they make you provide like something crazy, like 3 to 5 options of priority of the dates you want. And that is stressful because you're now coordinating with family and friends. So from what I understand, they kind of gather in a room and see, okay, like who wants this date, and I guess where do they want it, and is it available? So that was very stressful. We ended up getting our first pick, which was great. But before we move on to something else, Stephanie, I don't know if you wanted to jump in about the whole menu options for special events that Disney does.
Sure. So the special events side of things is completely different than the wedding stuff. Like you said, Shannon, they're such in high demand. So they have to be, a year or more out. But I'm telling you, I knew I wanted to do the birthday party back in 2013. And so I did that like 3 or 4 months in advance, maybe. But the Christmas party I did in 2020, it was literally 6 weeks. Because I remember emailing them at Thanksgiving and saying, hey, we're coming in a few
Oh
weeks.
my
So can I
gosh.
talk about this? And
Oh, wow.
nothing is laid out for you. Yeah. And you always start by going to meetings and events, Disney meetings and events.com, and you can just go from there. And I just emailed the general email there, and they put you
Mhm.
with who you need to be put with. But basically, because you can do it literally anywhere on property apart from the Magic Kingdom, um, you can pick in-park venues. And so for me, it was just, hey, what's cool? What, like you were saying, Ashley, like what has the most, ambiance, what has like really cool decor that I don't have to spend a lot of money on flowers or decorations. And so for the 13 party, I did the prop shop, which is obviously no longer there
Ah,
because it's
love it.
demolished for Toy
Hmm.
Story Land. But it was amazing. I mean, it had from all these retired parades and shows from Disney. We just walked around the room and just took pictures with everything. And we had a long banquet table in the middle, and the food and everything was set up for us, and it was really cool. And we just got to go backstage and do that for a few hours. And then in 2020, I chose Epcot, and I chose the Living
Mm.
Seas. Uh, Salon, I guess is what they call it, and
Yeah.
it's near
Hmm.
the Coral Reef restaurant, but you actually go into a unmarked door prior to that around the building. And so you have the backdrop of the water, so that was great.
So
And I didn't
cool.
have to do too much. I did the floral arrangements on the table as little Christmas trees. They were real
Oh,
evergreens,
Yeah.
and so the people got to take them home. My friends and family got to take them home with them. They were heavy, but they still
oh,
took them home.
cool.
And so, but as far as the menu, I tell you, at the prop shop one, I basically, because we were staying at the Grand Floridian, so I worked with their planners there, and they were
Mhm.
Mhm.
phenomenal. The kids had their birthday cakes made by the pastry chef there at the Grand. They were
Oh,
immaculate,
Oh,
and
wow.
the food was basically just whatever I wanted, and I could just pick from what they had menu wise, or I could just say whatever came to mind. But it was kind of a basic thing. And then for Epcot, they had pre-packaged or pre-planned menus, and they were so neat. It was basically like eating around the world at your
Oh
event.
my
And
gosh.
so I picked one, and then I just added to, like, I changed the dessert. I added a Yule log birthday cake for a friend of mine that was there, and some little details to it. But yeah, it was really neat, and we got to kind of pick from the greatest restaurants. I think some of the greatest restaurants on property are at Epcot, so we got to pick from those, like Le Cellier's cheese soup and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So it was pretty
Oh, that was in my
neat.
cocktail hour. I
Oh,
There you go.
nice.
Yeah, I actually, on the subject of Epcot, though, I'm curious how this has changed. I wanted to do a welcome event as a firework dessert party at Epcot for Illuminations, and I couldn't because my wedding was in November, and they did not allow firework events in Epcot on a Friday and Saturday during a festival, so Food and Wine Festival. So
Oh, I see.
now that the
Are
festivals span
basically
all
year
year,
round.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
think I think they do. I don't think they restrict them anymore. Excuse me.
Probably
When we were
not.
there in February, of course, it was the Festival of the Arts, and
Hmm.
they had a place blocked off. And I know for a fact that the conventions that go, my brother has a dental convention in February every other year, and they'll go, and they always do a fireworks dessert party at Epcot. So they do
Nice.
block them off in certain locations there.
Nice.
Got you. Oh,
Oh.
sorry, everyone. Everyone froze. All right. So, um, so those were all the pros. So we've got, you've booked, we've planned. What about day of? Because I won't lie, that was um my one hiccup, which again was surprising because everything as far as the planning went, it was all so easy. But then the morning of, and I will say the caveat, we somehow, like, our planner, something came up. She wasn't the one that we worked with wasn't the planner who was like the on-site event coordinator the day of our wedding. Um, but the day of, it just felt very, and I realize probably all weddings to a certain degree feel this way, but it just felt very chaotic. Like, we got to the hotel, we didn't 100% know where to go. It took them a minute to find our room, like our get ready room. There wasn't really clear instructions on like how early we could set up, because we brought like table settings and the number cards and things like that for the reception room. Like, how early could we set those things up? And just the staff at the resort didn't really, like, there wasn't really one single person, because again, our event coordinator, I think something happened. I don't
Oh.
know if it was a last minute emergency, but the person that was going to be our coordinator for the day didn't show up until an hour or two after the ball really got rolling. So it just, that part I was a little surprised by. And like, we didn't really
Disappointing.
see her
Yeah.
after, like, she came and got us, or she came to the room after we were already kind of getting ready. And then she kind of disappeared. Like, I don't fully recall seeing her or having her like check in with me or my husband throughout like the rest of the day. And I couldn't tell you where she went to. It was very odd.
Yeah,
That is
that
odd.
is odd. I had probably the opposite experience. My coordinator, she was actually there both nights. So for the welcome event and for my wedding. For the welcome event, she stayed in constant contact with us because we did have a beach party planned at Yacht and Beach Club. And there were tornado warnings, storms blowing through, and she remained in contact with me. And then she gave me the bad phone call. But in the moment, I wasn't even disappointed because I went into my wedding weekend saying like things are going to go wrong, and I'm just going to accept it. So I mean, but it was flawless in the sense that, you know, everything was just basically moved inside to Ariel's. Like they had the venue space reserved just in case there was weather, like bad weather. So they kind of had that plan B set in place. The worst part was I take for granted the fact that I know where I'm going and my guests do not. So some guests rolled in
Oh
really
no.
late because they had no idea how to find Ariel's. Like, even though, you know, we were
Yep.
still at the same resort, but on the day of my wedding, that was pretty flawless. Like we brought everything to the wedding pavilion probably the day before, and they took care of everything. They took care of setting all my stuff up. They even had a clear bag, and they had it marked with my name. And they're like, anything you're going to want, put in here. So extra shoes. She had my shoes waiting for me, like under my table.
Oh,
So
wow.
here's the
That's
thing,
awesome.
though, with Disney, I think my reception ended at 10 or 10:30. Like on the dot, lights on, people are breaking things down. Like we got to get out of here. Like they were not messing around with
Mhm.
like the hard stuff. But
No,
other,
no, they
but
weren't.
it was. I did have a good experience with my coordinator.
Well, that's good to
So
hear.
similarly to the weddings, you do have an event coordinator at your special event party. And
Mm.
we get a BEO that you have to sign prior to. And the one from 2013, I mean, those ladies were on it. They were down to the 15-minute mark. Like, we're going
Yeah.
to cut the birthday cake here. We did have a character come and see the kids, and it was Mickey. And so he came in with the cakes, and so they had that 30 minutes blocked off. And so they were very to the, like I said, to the 5 to 10 minute. And also we were having transportation because we had
Mm-hmm.
my kid's birthday is Halloween, so we were going to Mickey's Not So Scary that evening.
Oh
So
my
they
gosh.
transported us from
Aw,
backstage back over to the Grand
What a
Floridian so we could get
day.
ready for that. Oh, it was amazing. But and then for the one at
wow.
Christmas, we had the events coordinator there as well. And they are, like you said, Shannon, very good about communication. You know, they keep you
Mhm.
up to date on anything that might need to change. 2 days before, I added a party of four. I added four people because of some local friends of mine or cast members. And I said, hey, can they come? And she was like, sure. So we had the kids doing some painting activities. They had a scavenger hunt set up, and so they kind of had to modify that on the fly for me, but they were able to do so. So they do
Wow.
work with you. You're absolutely right. They do a great job. But yeah, I think it really just comes down to, like you said, Ashley. I think something must have happened with your planner because
Mhm.
I too had initially started with somebody and then she ended up having a baby right before, so
Oh,
then
Oh,
everything had to get transferred over to someone else. But they were great. They were very professional. And yeah, I think, like I said, anything that you want done they'll be able to do. Is just, you know, the cost of doing it.
yeah. Well, like especially nowadays, and anything for a price. I mean,
Right.
yeah,
True.
and you could have characters. You can even have improv, or you can have people come in as uninvited guests and bug your guests, which I thought was amazing, but was just not in my budget. You can have
I
an artist.
volunteer. No.
Yeah.
yeah.
You can have an artist sit and paint a live, canvas of your wedding.
That looks gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about endless options for Disney, I mean, endless options in terms of decor, in terms of entertainment. I did go with a live band. That was something that was very important to my husband since he's not a Disney person. He also doesn't like dancing. So he's like, I just want good food and I want a live band, not a DJ. So because Disney like cut it close with picking the date, we had to run right to get our band, which Ashley had mentioned. You do get lists of vendors, outside vendors that Disney
Mhm.
has worked with or recommends that are local to the area. So we went with Leonard Brothers Band. They do perform a lot in the Orlando area, like not just weddings, they perform at venues and stuff as well. But they already had my date. Someone else had them on selected, but they didn't put a deposit down yet. So they had to go to that couple and say, either put a deposit down or we have to release the date. Thank goodness they released it, and I scooped them up real quick. So things like that, you do have to be quick on, because Disney does have some shorter deadlines.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I guess probably, I don't, because we didn't have that problem with our date. And we were only a year out, and which is, I get, because on the one hand, I was going to say, well, demand, but there's also less options. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
apart from the wedding pavilion itself, which I know a lot of people want, but, you know, reception or even other places to actually get married. So I guess that's surprising that they have like the lottery system and everything, because we didn't, when we went for our initial consult, which would have been about a year, a little over a year out, because it was like spring break the year before when we went and decided on everything. Yeah, we gave them, I think it was two different dates, but both were available.
My best guess is that it was a Saturday, and it was a 5 o'clock ceremony time
Yeah,
at the wedding pavilion, and it was the first weekend of
the wedding
November.
pavilion.
When I tell you it was a picture perfect day and there wasn't a drop of humidity, like it was chef's kiss. So, you know, it is tricky. My mother, for a very long time, told me that I was not allowed to get married in Disney World because of the humidity and her hair will look atrocious. And I told her I was
Oh
going anyway. And then
no.
we got a blessing from above, and the wedding day. And that's hard to do in Florida, in Central Florida. It's like no humidity, not too hot,
Truly.
not too cold, no rain. So,
That
What
truly
did
is
what did both
incredible.
of you do, what did both of you do for your rehearsal dinners?
mm,
Ours was pretty, I don't want to say basic because it was still really special, but we just went with, because obviously everything is within walking distance, so there's no travel. So our ceremony was at the Rose Garden at the Disneyland Hotel. So obviously we had the actual uh, rehearsal itself, and then we actually walked over to, and I, for the life of me, can't remember what it's called. Um, but we went to one of the restaurants at Downtown Disney, um, and it was an Italian restaurant, and I can't for the
Naples
life of me.
45? Not Naples
Maybe
45. I think it's just Naples there.
it might just be Naples. Um,
In,
it had a rooftop, and yeah, for the life of me, because that was the one and only time I ever ate there. And we had dinner there, and then me and my bridesmaids went to California Adventure in Disneyland to play
nice.
afterwards,
Nice.
because we did it
Yeah.
slightly earlier. We did have to do our rehearsal like at an awkward time in the middle of the day because there was a ceremony that night. So I think we had to do our rehearsal at like
Ah,
2 o'clock. Um, and so, yeah, so then after that, we kind of had almost like a lunch dinner. And then everybody kind of got released to play. The guys got to go play. The girls went to go play. And then everybody else in the wedding got to go play too.
Yeah. So our, what do you call it, rehearsal actually took place in a small conference room at the yacht club, because I guess there was a wedding happening at the pavilion, which turned out fine. My in-laws hosted the rehearsal lunch, and it was at Paddlefish. That was my first time eating at Paddlefish, and it was actually great. So it was the third floor, the top floor of Paddlefish, and you get both the indoor and the outdoor section. Um, I felt like we had so much time, not only to sit down and eat, but to also just enjoy that deck area. We had the alcohol push pops that were so tasty. So it ended up being
Ooh.
great.
I think that's great. I've always looked at the California Grill at Disney World. They have the Napa and
Yeah.
the Sonoma
Mhm.
rooms. which
I
are,
wanted that.
just the view itself is gorgeous. And I thought that would be a perfect spot for like a rehearsal dinner, or something to that
Yeah.
effect. But
No,
you can get, I mean, you got Mary Shannon at the Wedding Pavilion. Obviously, that's very traditional. That's beautiful, gorgeous. Don't have to do much to the interior. But I was perusing the website, and I did see that they have some very interesting venues inside the park as well. And I think Allison, did she get married inside the park, or at least maybe she had her reception inside the park at Epcot. But at the Magic Kingdom, I'm not sure about Allison, but at the Magic Kingdom, you now can get married at the train station. And it's like at
yeah,
10 a.m. in the morning. It's a weird
yeah,
time,
Oh,
but then
that's
it's
yeah, it
so
like a,
is.
cool.
a very short ceremony. Yeah,
Well, I
it's
do
very
know
strange.
that
But
if you, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, you're fine. Go ahead.
If you want to get photos taken like in the park, like Magic Kingdom, I didn't do it personally, but I know someone who did do it. And you have to basically be up at 2, 3 in the morning to get like full face of hair and makeup done because it is done, I believe, on a different day than your wedding, possibly the day after. So just keep that in
Honestly,
mind if
that's
that's what you want. Yeah.
yeah.
With
Because
nobody in the
we
park.
talked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we talked about that, and I think I don't even know what time I would have had to have been ready to do that. Because I think technically, depending on the time of your wedding, you could technically do it the morning of your wedding. Again, it would just come down to timing. But
Mhm.
my husband was very traditional in that he didn't want to see me in my wedding dress like before the actual ceremony. And
Yeah.
then the morning after, we were actually going ahead and leaving for our honeymoon, and that was kind of booked in.
Mm. Oh, well,
Do
for
it.
your
But
friend.
yeah, and they were, but much like the wedding, they were very clear with, yeah, you have to be up super duper early because I think they do it. At least they used to. Try to keep it as close to before park open as possible. So you might have a little overlap with actual park opening. But they did one because they don't want you running around the park in your wedding dress looking like a Disney princess, and two, just so that there's not a bunch of people in your wedding pictures, bunch of
I
tourists.
think it's a rule. Isn't it a rule that you can't be in the park in your wedding dress? I believe.
Nope. And they
Oh,
made that, especially at Disneyland, they made that abundantly clear because again, everything is in like walking distance. You don't have to travel. You can't. It's even closer than say hopping the monorail. Um, they made that abundantly clear several times. And pretty much all the communication, especially as we got closer to the wedding, was basically if you try to go through a turnstile in your wedding dress, bad
hmm,
things will happen.
yeah,
Oh no.
they tell you that. I wanted to mention, I forgot that when we talked about the room block, you do get some little magical extras. And something that you get with your room block is the bride and groom gets one free night standard room at any
Oh yeah.
resort.
Oh, nice.
Um, it was always a dream of mine to stay in the main building at the Grand Floridian. So I asked them if it would be possible to upgrade, and they said yeah. So whatever the standard rate is at the Grand Floridian, like that'll be covered, and then whatever the difference is, you pay for out of pocket. Which I was like, well, that's amazing. You're basically getting that 50% off. So we stayed concierge level, and the night after we decided to do it the night after our wedding so we can really enjoy the afternoon. I spent maybe 2 to 3 hours just drinking wine in the concierge lounge, which actually is like overlooks the lobby, and just listening to the Grand Floridian Orchestra and just taking it all in. It was so amazing. But some other
That's
little things that were so good. Other little things that were unexpected. I would get mail from them, little gifts, and they would come randomly and unexpected. There was a picture of this, but since we can't have the pictures, I have it. This is actually a shoe bag. I'm sorry, it's a little dirty. And
Oh, I'm so jealous.
it's got this
I
little
can get a
gem, and
shoe bag.
It says Cinderella
I feel
is proof. It says Cinderella is proof that a new pair of shoes can change your life. And I'm like, wow, that's adorable.
Love
They
that.
also gave you a little charm. I wish I had it. I don't know where it is. It was a charm with a ribbon that you could tie to your flowers, and it was blue, so it could be your something blue, and it said faith, trust, and pixie dust. And oh, I get chills just thinking about it. But we got a few little things like this that really just excited you, for the day, and we're just little magical extras. So it was cool.
I love that. I will say that we also got a surprise back at our hotel room the night of our kid's birthday party, and they had little birthday bags set up for them on the bed, and then a picture frame
Oh,
to commemorate
Oh,
the occasion and
cute.
everything. And I thought that was really sweet. And they pulled all of the floral arrangements. I don't know if they did this for you guys, but they pulled all the flowers and the balloons and everything that we had. They pulled them to our room that evening. So we got to enjoy them the rest of our trip.
oh,
So that was really neat too.
Oh, very cool. We didn't. Just I think probably because we were only staying the one. We got our one complimentary room.
Right.
Stay at the Disneyland hotel, but
mm.
because we were leaving, I don't think my mom saved stuff, obviously, but we didn't.
Yeah.
We got so I didn't get a bag and I didn't get the charm, which I will say I'm very, very jealous of. They are safely tucked away, but we got a complimentary watch set.
Oh,
Which was really cool.
Wow.
So it was a his and hers watch set with Cinderella. I think it was Cinderella Castle on the back of them, and they're white and yellow gold. They're really beautiful.
That's awesome.
But they are safely packed away for special occasions. So I didn't have time to go run down and get them without waking up the baby. So, but that was really the only like keepsake that we got, which beautiful. But I'm really jealous.
Oh, shoot. It's in the other room. Sorry, I just remembered. I did get one thing and they gave it to us at the end of the night. It was a beautiful picture frame, and it was like a portrait of the Grand Floridian, and it had our wedding date on the bottom of it. Ooh, I just got chills again.
Oh, that's so cute. I don't even think
That's
I have
awesome.
a jewelry box that came in up here. No, I do not. It's downstairs. But yeah, so those are all of our experiences. I hate to cut it so short, but we have another thing at 9, unfortunately, tonight. But before we go, now that we've kind of inundated you with all of our info and stories, does anybody in the chat have any questions? Have we made you want to book your wedding or your next magical event at the parks?
Nico the Greco says I should have had my wedding at Disney.
Yep.
Aww.
I mean, I'm sure it was beautiful wherever it was.
Vow renewals.
Yep. I mean, hey.
Or do like Stephanie does and just have a party, because
I was
that's
gonna say,
fun
or
too.
just have...
Because you can.
I mean, yeah. I never thought to do a party there.
A special event.
Yeah.
Oh, they have some great locations, and some of them obviously have changed. Like you said, they tore down the prop shop to build Toy Story Land and everything. And then, like, I've seen people with their wedding receptions at the Odyssey at Epcot, and now, of course, they don't use that for wedding receptions anymore. But there are still some great locations and things that are hidden that you might not even know are there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the amount of random event corporate lounge meeting rooms hidden all over the parks is just you would be amazed at how many there are. They're all there hidden.
And if anyone's interested, I can post some pictures that we're going to have tonight on my Twitter. If you want to see some of the room decor and stuff, I can put that up there.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. We did have two, but right before we go, we did have 2 other super chats we forgot to address. Sorry. We had Rosita. She said $20. Rosita. Hey, just doing my super chat queen thing. I do love you gals in ink and paint. How about that CM in Paris, huh? Yeah, how about that?
Oh,
Wow.
And then,
we'll have to have a follow-up wedding conversation about that.
yeah, then we
Definitely.
had
That's a night in the
10
dream suite if there ever needed to be.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. Then we had pretty cool $10. Now that Disney owns Fox, they should develop and program an animatronic of the bishop from The Princess Bride to perform weddings. Mawigs.
Womp
I would
to
do a vow
womp.
renewal for that.
That would be awesome.
Well, with
This
that,
is
everyone, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We will probably post some updates on the next show here in the near future. So keep an eye out for that. The current plan would still be to have a show here, not next week, but the following week. Topic to be determined because it's summertime and I'm going to plead sick baby the past couple weeks. So we haven't gotten the show schedule finalized just yet. But we will update you and post, and we cannot wait to see everybody again. Have a wonderful night, and we will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.